Hello and welcome to another of my classic magazine reviews. If you've seen any of my previous videos for Crash, Zap, Your Spectrum or Antics, then you'll know what to expect. But in a nutshell, I'll go through the chosen magazine, calling out the key news, articles and features, as well as game reviews, competitions and editorial. And I'll usually play 4 games per episode, which are chosen by virtue of being the first game reviewed in the mag, the last reviewed, the game that received the best review score, and the game that received the worst. I'll then compare my scores to those of the magazine review team, although this mini-series will be a little bit different due to the machines being covered and the lack of formal reviews or scores. Because this time I'm looking at the first of the big spectrum magazines, Sinclair User. Launched in March 1982, Sinclair User was published by ECC Publications and was initially edited by John Stilichi and Nigel Clark. By early 1982, the ZX80 had been well and truly superseded by its little brother, the ZX81, which had sold over 300,000 units by the time the magazine came out and would go on to shift around 1.5 million units, so the market was certainly there for a dedicated Sinclair magazine. Sinclair User would go through many changes in its 11-year run, but this episode will cover its first format, as we take a journey through Sinclair User the early years. This is the 2-year period between the magazine's launch in March 1982 and the arrival of its two main rivals in 1984, Crash and Your Spectrum. I'll take a full look through the first and last issues during that period to see how the magazine has changed, and I'll also give a brief look at each issue in between. It wasn't until issue 24, the last of the early years issues, that formal magazine reviews were included, though I will try to show a little footage of key games from earlier issues. So let's dive in and take a look at Sinclair User the Early Years, Part 1. Proudly claiming to be the independent magazine for the independent user, Sinclair User promises pages and pages of programs and a look inside the Sinclair organisation, plus hardware, software, new products, education, a helpline and mind games, as well as a competition to win a printer. And in early 1982, Sinclair Computers meant the ZX81 and were treated to a picture of a father and son delighted with their new technological marvel, underneath a trail that suggests arcade, card and board game fun, all for just 60p. The contents would set the tone for future issues and stayed pretty constant throughout the early years, with Sinclair Voyance looking at the future of Sinclair Computers, Software Scene and Hardware World reviewing the latest releases, Helpline offering programming support, School Spot looking at computers with an educational angle, type-ins, competitions and mind games where the thinking man or woman's games are featured. In the Sinclair Voyance section, we're introduced to the new mag and are told that its purpose is to help you make the most out of your Sinclair machine and will provide as much fun and information as possible. Each issue will always print a good selection of programs, news of new products and in-depth reviews of hardware and software. We'll also get general features about people involved with Sinclair and the ZX machines. And on this page, they intend to give us an insight into the future, starting with talk of an industry-wide challenge to build an adapter that would allow ZX81s to directly communicate with each other via Prestel, though the writer says that he shudders to think what this would mean in terms of software piracy. Rumours continue to abound that Sinclair are considering a mass storage device for the ZX81, though it's unclear how high on Sinclair's shopping list of new products this would be. And finally, they cover the big topic, the ZX82. Will they or won't they? The writer's opinion is that they won't, at least not in 1982, but he'd be delighted to be proved wrong. Speculation has been rife from the point the ZX81 was released, and people decided that the 80 in the ZX80 must have been for the year and not because of the Z80 processor. Speculation was further fuelled by Clive Sinclair's annoyed reaction to losing out to Acorn for the BBC-branded microcomputer, when he said that he could have met Acorn's specification for half the price of the model that was actually chosen. So will he now look to release a competing product? Time will, and of course did, tell. The magazine was very heavy on adverts for all sorts of games, utilities and add-ons for the ZX80 and 81, such as this page for Quicksilver's offerings. But the first of the soon-to-be regular sections is Software Scene, where we get reviews of games like 3D Labyrinth from Axis, Monopoly from Workforce, and a certain Football Manager game that strangely isn't mentioned by name, but we are given a good overview of the features and are told that it's available for £9.95 from Addictive Games for both the ZX80 and ZX81 with a 16K RAM pack. Hardware World looks at newly released add-ons for your ZX80 and 81, including an audio modulator that feeds sound through the TV speakers, the ZX99 expansion board that allows 4 tape recorders to be handled at one time with compatible business programs, and a professional keyboard, though most of these add-ons require you to be competent with a soldering iron. We then get a feature on Ruth Bromley, who works for Sinclair and single-handedly responds to around 50 technical requests a day from struggling ZX users. She tells us that by far the biggest area people have trouble with is loading software from tape, and is almost always caused by an incompatible tape player. We get some great photos from the recent ZX Micro Fair at Westminster Central Halls, and then a useful hints and tips section for those new to their Sinclair machine, with practical advice like setting up the machine, an overview of BASIC, and how to save your programs. Andrew Hewson, who's already published the book Hints and Tips for your ZX80 and the ZX81 version, and will soon form lauded software house Hewson Consultants, starts his regular column where he answers technical questions about programming your ZX machines. SchoolSpot focuses on the educational use of computers and is quick to tell us why from primaries to polytechnics the whole education spectrum is using ZX81s, pointing out that for the price of a single Commodore PET or Apple computer, educational institutions could buy 10 ZX81s. This is followed by 8 pages of type-ins, starting with Intercept for the ZX80, where you must destroy enemy rockets with your Intercept missiles. Next is Star Swerver, written by 14-year-old Tim Rogers, with you navigating your way through a dangerous star field. And after a couple of maths programs, we get a version of the Othello board game. Before our final offerings, the casino game Blackjack, and the drafts-like board game Old 49er. Mike Salem of Hildeby Limited then evangelises on why the ZX81 can be a great business machine. And we get a 3-page feature on how to convert your ZX80 programs to run on a ZX81. Next we get a look at 4 books to help you get the most out of your ZX. Before Phil Garrett looks through the vast library of already published software to help us sort the diamonds from the glass, calling out Macronic's Space Invaders for actually including the program listing with the cassette, Quicksilver's Defender for adding sound via a Quicksilver add-on, and for using the entire height of the TV screen. He also praised DK-Tronic's Centipede, but claimed he couldn't describe it adequately without confusing all and sundry. He then tells us about Arctic's ZX Chess and its impressive computer response times. The hardware section covers all the announced products from the past year's microfairs, including Quicksilver's soundboard, a digital cassette recorder designed specifically for the ZX81, and lots of RAM packs and keyboards, plus the Spectrum printer and a disk system from Macronics. Though we are told to be wary of certain manufacturers at microfairs who claim to have new products available when all they're really doing is gauging market interest. This issue's competition asks you to send in your best original games program for the 1K ZX81 to be in with a chance to win a ZX printer. We then get some more information on the British Telecom-backed competition to build a ZX81 Prestel adapter, telling us that more than 20 entries have been submitted, hoping to win the £1,000 prize. Mind Games gives us the first in a series of articles by Philip Joy, writer of the first quality chess program for the ZX80. Philip will cover games that stimulate the brain as well as being fun. And issue 1 ends with the Sinclair Supermart, the classified ads section of the magazine, where you can pick up quality items like ZX81 Fortune Teller, a 10-pack of C12 cassettes, and a whole host of educational software. I hope you found that look back at issue 1 interesting. The tone's fairly dry, the page is wordy, and the ads plentiful, but as a record of its time, I found it fascinating. The magazine then follows quite rigidly to its format for the next couple of years, until the Spectrum took hold and SU got some serious rivals at the newsagents, so I won't be going through each issue in detail, but sit back again and I'll give you the recorded highlights of Sinclair User issues 2 to 12. Issue 2 arrived in May of 1982 and played heavily on the Mystic Meg vibe, with a fortune teller consulting a crystal ball and seeing a single word: Spectrum. And this theme is fully explored in the Sinclair Voyance page, with the declaration that the ZX82 will be around soon. We're also told that no other personal computer has had sales like the ZX81, which is approaching 400,000 units sold. Apparently though, potential ZX81 owners were put off by the lack of a proper keyboard or colour graphics, so the ZX82, or the Spectrum as we now believe it will be called, will have both of these features, plus much more, like its own matching ZX micro floppy, and it's expected to ship with 32K as standard. And although ZX80 owners were able to upgrade their machines with a new 8K ROM to match the ZX81's capabilities, there'll be no such option to upgrade the ZX81 to Spectrum level specs. The first letters page is printed this month, and the key takeaway from the 3 letters published is that readers want hardware and software reviews to be true and critical, and not just love-ins to appease the advertisers. Then we get an article on adventures, including reviews for Abersoft's Adventure, Gold from Hildeberg and Dictator by Bugbite, and about half a dozen more adventure reviews. The type-ins this time include a game called Monster Munch that has a basic 1K version, but also an expanded listing to upgrade the graphics and add in scoring for more powerful machines. We also get a rudimentary fruit machine simulator. And key articles include the advantages on programming machine code, and a fascinating visit to the Timex factory in Dundee, where the ZX81 is manufactured, with some interesting insight into the system testing and the assertion that current failure rates are exacerbated by kit returns due to poor component insertion or bad soldering rather than any component failure. For the June issue, we're treated to some changes. Firstly, the Sinclair User logo has gone blue instead of the red of the previous 2 issues. But we also get a sash introducing the Sinclair User Club, and in what I think is a first appearance in a magazine, we get the Spectrum Corner Rainbow, announcing a competition to win a Spectrum. Sinclair Voyance focuses on the impact of the Spectrum announcement on the many third parties who have ZX81 add-ons in development. If the Spectrum already does what their product is going to do, then are consumers going to ditch the ZX81 and simply buy a Spectrum to get the best of both worlds? But should people rush to the Spectrum, then a price reduction or a bump in the second-hand market could attract a new group of users to the budget computer. And SU's overall conclusion is that the Spectrum will likely slow, but won't halt the growth of the ZX81 peripheral market. It's slim pickings in the software scene this month, with just a bridge scorepad, programming routines toolkit, an advanced calculation engine, and management information for holidays and sickness. There is one games release, and at least that release contains 11 games on Arctic's 1K Games Pack. There's more going on in the hardware world, however, with the pick being Monolith Electronics' new ZX81 disk system that can store up to 70K of data on a single disk. The hot news for June is that Sinclair Research have turned a not too shabby profit of £10 million from a £27 million turnover in the last tax year, with profits expected to double in the coming year. Also newsworthy is Acorn's Spectrum competitor, the Electron, which will launch at a price of between £120 and £150 for a 32K machine. Then Robin Bradbeer takes an in-depth look at the Spectrum, concluding that the 48K Spectrum is incredible value and is potentially as powerful as an Apple II, which costs 3 times as much. So we'll give Commodore, Acorn and Atari a run for the money. Another new feature in issue 3 is the use of colour photos and imagery. I wonder if 12-year-old Alex was aware of the significance of this picture at the time. The article itself is a rather sweet tale of a mother trying to understand the new world of computers that have engrossed her firstborn so completely. Phil Garrett then takes a look at how graphics are the future, which sounds like a ridiculous statement, but given that the ZX80 and ZX81 didn't really have any to speak of, it probably wasn't back then. Pick of the type-ins this month is The ZXiatrist by Dilwyn Jones of Bangor, North Wales. This computer psychiatrist will listen to your problems and concerns and will respond to them accordingly. And finally, the June competition marks the launch of the Spectrum, with your chance to win both the computer and a printer. However, to win one, you must create a detailed specification for an EEPROM blower that can program plus 5V EEPROMs. It must supply its own power, program the EEPROMs on the board, and not restrict any other peripherals, such as a 16K RAM pack. And your entry must also include construction and circuit diagrams. Blimey, that's a far cry from, in 15 words, tell us why you love Sinclair User. July's edition gives us a nice green logo, and with the Timu Grange Hill cast on the cover, you can see that this issue will be education focused. This edition of Sinclair Voyance considers the home computer market as a whole. Using W.H. Smith's as a barometer of its size, the company is apparently selling more mags on computers than it does women's magazines, and the top 3 computer magazines all outsell Woman's Own. And despite the ZX81 now edging towards 500,000 sales, it's thought that this is just 2% of the potential market. The idea of modular computer systems like hi-fi separates is mooted, before the writer drifts off into a lament about how easy it would be for large Japanese conglomerates to push companies like Sinclair to the sidelines. The education theme is kicked off with an article where Dave Sayer discusses how the ZX81 is being used in his school, and how even a basic 1K computer can be used to teach the fundamentals of mathematics. We also get a short typing education game where children try to build a bridge by answering simple addition questions, which reminds me of the maths games I would play at school on an Atari 400. Stephen Adams then takes the lid off the Spectrum and looks inside. The article is a little too technical for me though, but he does conclude that even with some peculiarities, the Spectrum is real value for money. In the news, we hear that W.H. Smiths are looking to add additional micros to their range along with the already stocked ZX81, and we also hear about the first ZX Micro Fair outside of London, which will take place this month in Birmingham, and 2 bits of news about Clive himself. Firstly, the big man will be taking part in the Cambridge Half Marathon. A keen runner, Clive's already completed a full marathon, and he's provided £5,000 of sponsorship to the festival. On top of that, in his capacity as chairman of the British Mensa Society, Clive's donated 23 ZX81s as prizes in this year's Mensa Superbrain competition. Next we hear again from Nicole, the mother from the last issue, who was struggling with the disruption her son's new computer had brought to their family life, as she continues her journey towards computing enlightenment, despite being the kind of person who thought there was cold electricity for the fridge and coloured electricity for the traffic lights. I like Nicole's gentle and amusing storytelling, and this kind of article is so far away from what I'd assumed early Sinclair User would be that I'm both surprised and endeared to the mag in a way that I wasn't expecting. But back to Nicole and her final verdict. Unnecessary though a ZX81 may be, what a marvellously clever and obedient little chap he is. My choice from the type-ins is Sheepdog, which is a very challenging interpretation of the Sheepdog trials. Impressive stuff in less than 30 lines of basic. Software Scene is once again disappointing, with just a couple of business programs, a French tutor, and a few variations on very familiar games. Hardware World, however, introduces the intriguing Kempston keyboard, which is fitted onto the ZX81 over the existing keyboard to provide proper moving keys. Issue 5 is the summer special, and promises reviews of rainy day software. Inside, we find that Sinclair Voyance has gone all Jackanory, so settle down while I tell you the story of the typical Sinclair User family in a time not too far in the future. It's that bleak period between Christmas and New Year, and the family are bored of reruns and old films, so they switch off the telly, hook up their latest Sinclair machine and load up Prestel holiday pages. They select a group of holidays that they like the look of and request more details, which arrive on the screen immediately and are printed out using their Sinclair colour printer. They choose a holiday, check availability, book and pay their deposit all through Prestel and immediately receive a confirmation, a bill for the balance and all the required holiday info. As the holiday approaches, they check the weather conditions for the resort and the exchange rate for pesetas, again all via Prestel. As they hate crowds, they do all of their holiday shopping from home, from one of Prestel's many mail order services. Their tickets and boarding passes arrive and are automatically printed, so pausing only to cancel the milk and switch control of their home security system to their neighbour's Sinclair computer, they head off on their adventure. The luggage is the typical collection of mismatched suitcases, but also includes a large black briefcase. When they get to the airport, they find more families with similar black cases, all of which are treated with care and stowed carefully under the seat as hand luggage. Arriving in Mallorca, they head to their hotel and unpack, revealing that the briefcase contains their Sinclair computer system, packed safely in plastic foam, with a flat-screen Sinclair television powered by a light but powerful battery developed by the Sinclair Electronic Car Division. The next day they head to the beach, and spend half the day enjoying the sun, sea and sand, and then the rest of the day with the Sinclair, just like many other users on the beach. The case also contained a device that lets the family contact their neighbours and collect messages via the telephone system, and the typical SU family have a wonderful holiday, returning home refreshed and relaxed. The end. Following story time, the article then suggests that all of this may sound far-fetched, but that almost all of the technologies mentioned are already available, with the only two not yet developed being the colour printer and the lightweight battery. 40 years on, and we have all of that and more, without even needing a black briefcase, which means we've made it to the future. Now where did I park my hover car? The summer theme continues as Nicole Seeger asks, does your Sinclair machine get lonely during your summer holidays? Will it rust? Do the chips go stale? Will dust clog up its computer arteries? Well, she needn't have worried about that last one, as teacher Keith Hall explains that one of the reasons why the ZX81 is so suitable for schools is that much maligned keyboard, which is able to withstand dust, greasy fingers and even minor drink spills. But she also needn't have worried about the other aspects. Your computer won't get lonely if you take it with you. A ZX81 can run happily from a car battery, so beach computer clubs aren't completely out of the question. But more realistically, why not keep your computer friend occupied while you're away? By having it control your heating and security systems, or even water the plants and feed the cat, with appropriate add-ons. But Nicole feels that this is all getting out of hand. Our lives aren't, or shouldn't be, ruled by a small plastic box, no matter how full of electronic marvels it is. We then get a look at a different way to get your computing fixed during the summer break, with Beaumont's new Computer Camp, where children aged between 10 and 17 can enjoy outward bound activities, as well as a computer basic programming course on the newly installed ZX81 Computer Lab. An expanded software scene then takes a look at the games you can play should the Great British Summer turn a bit rainy. But unfortunately, most are again just interpretations of the same old arcade games. We find short reviews for titles such as 3D Defender from J.K. Gray, Asteroids from the Electronic Pencil Company, another Asteroids game, and Space Invaders, both from Silversoft. Or for something different, why not try out the Diggle Kitchen, which provides 28 recipes from around the world? Though I'm not sure how that's better than an actual book, unless your ZX81 is set up in the kitchen, that is. In the news, we find the recent microfair in Manchester has been labelled a disaster, with complaints from exhibitors and attendees alike that the venue was on the wrong side of town, parking was a nightmare, attendance was low, advertising was poor, and the warm bank holiday kept people away. We also hear that the ZX81 is starting to make traction in America. Following a direct mail offer to American Express customers, 2,000 orders were received in a day, and more than 25,000 in the first 3 weeks. Amongst the 8 pages of type-ins, we get P. Hammond of Ipswich's version of Frogger. And finally, we get an interview with award-winning industrial designer Rick Dickinson, the man behind the form of both the ZX81 and the Spectrum, who explains the design process at Sinclair Research. And rounding out part 1 of the Sinclair User Early Years is issue 6, the School Special. But never mind all that educational stuff, this issue also contains a free supplement, Spectrum User, so we'll also take a look at that. But first, the main magazine. Sinclairvoyance looks at Clive Sinclair's prediction that the day would come when the computer replaces the school. Whilst presenting the case for computerised homeschooling, they also make clear that schools are far more than just teaching a curriculum. They're a major stage in learning social skills, and they conclude that the swift advances in computer-aided education is unlikely to not continue, but at the moment the problems of transferring learning to the home seem too great to be surmounted. Expanding on this concept, we have an interview with Eric Deason, author of 30 computing books, head of the educational ZX81 Users Group, honorary editor of Physics Education magazine, PhD student, chairman of the West Midlands Committee of the Association for Science in Education, and also head of Science and Computing at Highgate School in Birmingham. Like Clive Sinclair, Deason has strong beliefs about how computers will change education, and he's convinced that within 10 years, everyone will own a £10 computer, and within 50 years, there'll be no need for physical schools due to what he calls computerised freedom, and he asserts that computers will even remove the problems of discipline in schools. ZX81 price cuts are in the news, with the system now below £50, which is in some way a response to Binatone's announcement that they'll be looking to launch a £50 micro soon. We also get a picture of Clive Sinclair, helpfully highlighted amongst the throng of runners at the Cambridge Half Marathon. The pick of the type-ins is Towns, a geography teaching aid by T.E. Newham of Worcester Park, Surrey. The programme teaches and tests knowledge of the location and spelling of place names. In Software Scene, we look at 3 Pac-Man clones: Zuckman from DJL, Zedman from Babtech, and Mazeman from Abersoft. DJL would find themselves in hot water with Atari for their game, but more on that in a future video. And finally, we get an exclusive offer for Sinclair User readers, a ZX81 kit for just £29.95. But what of that supplement? There would be 3 Spectrum User supplements produced over the next 3 months, and issue 1 is quite light on content, with just 16 pages and 8 of those adverts. First up, we have the news, which covers anger at the growing delays for Spectrum orders, with some customers having to wait up to 10 weeks. We also hear that Sinclair Research are looking to launch their own range of software, and that Sinclair are looking to enter the telesoftware market when it releases its Spectrum adapter that will allow users to load programs direct from Prestel. Next, Ian Stewart talks about the upgrade from ZX81 to Spectrum, before explaining how to update his ZX81 puzzle game Cats with new colourful graphics. And Andrew Hewson then provides more help for people wanting to transfer their programs written for the ZX80 or 81 to the Spectrum. And we also get the first Spectrum type-in to appear in Sinclair User. Written by N. Locke of Faversham, it's an update to the Galaxy Patrol program that was published in issue 2. In Starship, you must plot your spacecraft through the asteroid field, avoiding or shooting the asteroids whilst collecting the fuel cells to prolong your voyage. And finally for this issue, and for this episode, Alison Bailey gives us her first impressions at programming on the Spectrum, starting with type-in listings and then her first attempt to create a NIM-style game. It's an extremely human article showing failures, successes, and the steps required to get from the former to the latter. The code for the final game is given, so I did have a go, and found that there's a very similar game to Nemo on the Cascades Cassette 50 called Boggles, which raises 2 questions. Had the writer of Boggles already seen Alison's listing before creating his version? And did Alison receive more or less than a £10 Cascade paid for games on their collection? And that's it for part 1 of my Sinclair User The Early Years series. As we move through the remaining 3 parts of the series, there'll most likely be more opportunities for me to play some of the games included in the magazines. But I've really enjoyed reading the issues, and I'm already looking forward to recording the next part. Please do leave me some comments or feedback on Sinclair User and this video, and I'll see you soon on Sir Clive's Retro Games World.